Welcome to the podcast that is designed to fuel your success in selling technology solutions. I'm your host, Josh Lopresto, SVP of Sales Engineering at Telarus, and this is Next Level Biz Tech. Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we are talking about contact center, but more importantly, workforce management. So if you tuned in on the previous episode, you got to see the wonderful Jason Lowe talk about it. We were in the studio talking about the different aspects of really workforce management, laying it out, his approach to it, some of his experiences. Today we get to be joined by Chuck Krogman, who is SVP of Global Sales at Playvox, and we get to hear about Playvox's perspective and Chuck's journey. So Chuck, thanks for agreeing to come on, man.
All right. Well, Josh, pleasure to be here. And I already feel a little intimidated. I've known Jason Lowe, as we affectionately call him, J Lowe, for many, many years, and he's a tough act to follow. But appreciate you for the invite and participating today.
I have faith in you. I think it's going to be great. Don't be scared.
Right.
So, hey, Chuck, I want to hear first about just, before we get into tech stacks and WFM and all kinds of cool acronyms, just tell me about you. Give me your story, your personal journey. Where did you start? How did you get here? And how did you get to where you're at now?
Yeah. Actually, when I look and just kind of look at my own personal journey, it kind of just maps right along with a lot of the customers from my entry into from a technology perspective. I kind of moved into the technology sector at a time installing, supporting, and maintaining large, premise-based call centers for Rockwell, and kind of moved up through. I took a bit of a journey, as probably many people in your studio audience can testify to. I was with 13 years with ShoreTel and Mitel when the whole voice over IP telephony kind of took off and was hot, and continued to progress, moved over to the cloud, was with some great CCaaS providers with both Five9 and TalkDesk, and now here kind of more specialized in a really exciting and growing segment of the market in joining Playvox just a little over 2 years ago. So it's it's been a nice, as I said earlier, I kind of made that move from premise into a UC solution back into contact center. So it's been kind of fascinating.
I love it. I love that you rolled with the journey, right? I mean, you're in a spot that stood and it was what it was for a while consistently, and then all kinds of crazy evolutions. So it's probably been fun to see all these different evolutions, and who knows where it goes next. We'll get into some of that, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say, one of the gauges is it's really tough to get your wife and kids to really understand what you do. I think I've heard it simplified as much as, my dad does something with phones. And I said, let's just stick with that because, and I also did see as my kids are growing up, you're not really a popular career for bring your dad to school day. The lawyers and the police and firefighters always kind of take a much greater command for those. But from a career and a progression and working with channel partners, it's been tremendous.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've given up. My kid's just relegated to I get paid to talk on the phone, and you know
Yeah.
what? That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about in that evolution for you when today's track is about workforce management. What is it? Why does it matter? What does it do? And obviously, I want to hear Playvox's spin on that. But talk to me about how you first learned. When you went through that evolution, what was your first exposure besides in the broader CX side, where the whole workforce management thing came into play for you?
Yep. It was actually probably midway through my career at ShoreTel, where we were starting to move more toward not just pushing UCaaS solutions, but also saying, hey, we do have an offering here in terms of call center. And as we started to get further and further into the contact center offering, knowing that we were seeing it's a pretty sticky, and it was also part of a revenue generating customer retention type opportunity. And so it's about midway through, I started to have a discussion, with particular customers and raising, as they looked at their staffing models and kind of just throwing bodies at things. And, as I built my confidence up to ask just a simple question, well, how are you staffing the people and how do you decide how many you need and when? And it really, the response was typically, a lot of spreadsheets and just Google Sheets and a little bit of kind of finger in the air, look around the room, see who's on the phone. And just by asking that simple question and then, leveraging, some of the folks, our solution consulting team and others, that was kind of my initiation into it, was just simply asking a, pretty basic question.
Love it. Love it. My favorite, I'm going to plug it again. My favorite book out there, Power Questions. I've really missed out on getting royalties for this, but that's what changed the game for me. Just always have an inquisitive mind and ask, what is this? Why does it matter? Why do you care? How are you doing this? Great. Love to hear that. Okay. So set us up now, current state, workforce management. Tell me, in your perspective, what is it? Where is this industry? And then let's lead us into kind of where Playvox fits into that and why people need this product.
Yeah. So I think from a Playbox perspective, maybe start with who we are. And while workforce management is really, that's what we lead with, and really a core piece of what we call our greater workforce engagement management, or WEM solution, and which previously went by a different acronym with a little bit different feel to it. Some folks might refer to as workforce optimization, or WFO. But within our Playbox suite, it's really a good, I think, a strategic advantage to be able to offer not only taking all the advantages of workforce management, but being able to bring quality management, learning, performance, and gamification into the entire suite. Do so completely or do it a la carte. So I think, having that is important. But to address your initial question, workforce management, I think I'm a firm believer, again, of just keeping it simple, because that's what radiates with myself, partners, and actually the end users of maybe haven't been even subjected to anything other than a spreadsheet or maybe a basic tool. It's really about getting the right resource in the right place at the right time for that interaction. And the more that you can streamline that and leverage historical data, it means that you're doing more with less resources and actually doing a better job. And that in and of itself, I mean, you can apply a lot of different kind of things about call handling times, visibility into the queues, and a lot of other things that might complicate it. But I think it just boils down to getting the right resource in the right place at the right time will equate into operational efficiency.
Good. Easy to understand. Love it.
Yeah.
Walk me through, we're towards the end of this here, or a few questions later, I want to get to the more recent deal. But before we get to that, I want to talk about maybe just one of the first ones that you were ever involved in. So walk me through what that looked like, how it came about, and really what it transpired into.
Yeah, is it you always tend to remember that first opportunity, the first home run, or whatever you might be looking at in terms of when things occurred. And for me, it was in Louisville, Kentucky, of all places. I was out working on with a customer we had already sold a UCaaS solution to back in my ShoreTel days. And they were kind of talking through contact center, and we started to have a bit of just some normal discovery questions. And some of it, as one of the higher level executives in the conversation, he echoed some frustration in terms of continually adding, additional agents. And I said, is it just that your demand has grown, or what, why are we adding? He said, good question. He said, when I look at the call volumes, he goes, I'm not sure we've even figured out kind of where that is. I said, how exactly are you scheduling? Back to my power question, if you will. And there were 2 or 3 folks on the staff that had spreadsheets, and they had a certain block of time that they had for coverage hours, and they kind of just spread those across and then crossed their fingers. And in doing so, I just said, one thing you might want to consider, there are tools, and we can take historical data and we can actually map that to get your degree of variance, which essentially spreading people out at the time of need and doing a more efficient job. And I said, as a result, we may end up, needing fewer staff, or getting it in, as a result, you'll probably see improvements from CSAT, your call handling time, the wait times, et cetera. Needless to say, that was my kind of bell ringer, if you will, is that the moment of excitement and possibility, he said, now that's something I'd like to hear more about. And at the time, I hadn't sold a lot of WFM. All I knew was a couple of quick questions. So we did, follow up after that. They ended up deploying a workforce management solution, saw some very, very good results, and the amount of hiring was significantly less than they were planning, which meant the ROI was less than 90 days when you look at the salary saved. So for me, it made me certainly made me a believer in the technology.
Good, great story. Let's talk about this idea of, does it need to be integrated? Do I need to buy it with my seats? Should I have this fully integrated WEM suite? What's your perspective on, maybe how would you encourage people to look at that process of, should I add it? Should I get it in the beginning? How do I look at that?
Yeah, I'm having sold a really good amount of contact center and CCaaS solutions. My personal recommendation is, you're going to get the most benefit if you can allow yourself the opportunity to deploy that full workforce engagement suite right out of the gate. Now, sometimes there's limiting factors to that. Some is my staff just doesn't have the cycles because we have other competing projects. But in the end, the summary in terms of where I feel a full integrated suite in terms of the value of workforce engagement management is, it allows you to really, enhance the agent experience. It allows the value of those one-on-ones that an agent has with their supervisor. So if you look at it holistically, like one of the examples I might share is, if I'm an agent and I get a chance with my supervisor, I look at maybe a scorecard and see where, my strengths have been on my calls. And they say, hey, Chuck, you've done great, but your empathy hasn't been so great with some of our customers. And so what the recommendation is, of course, is, why don't we assign you into a learning track to take a couple of our courses on empathy? So what that can do with a fully integrated suite is, it allows you to, one, enroll me into an empathy class. When do I get assigned into that empathy class? On the workforce management tool that says, call peak volumes are down from 2 to 4 on Thursday afternoon. Chuck, you'll be taking your empathy courses from 2 to 4 on Thursday afternoon. And it brings it full cycle. And because I learned so much in my empathy class, I could actually then, on my next meeting with my supervisor, I can see if I've improved. And if I've improved, my supervisor can send me off to, what we call a karma store here in Playvox land. And I can get a reward in terms of earning points and using our gamification piece. So it brings it full cycle when you have all the tools at your disposal with one solution. But it also, with that, like I said, there's sometimes competing projects, resources, et cetera. So you also offer the flexibility of doing that in an a la carte fashion as well.
Woo, that's awesome. If that doesn't get you excited about technology, I don't know what will, because that leads us in maybe to the next question here. When you're in that sales cycle, I mean, sitting here listening to you, it's clear as day how somebody should be able to understand how they need this. But what do you walk into from maybe a challenge perspective? Are you finding that, I have to imagine a big chunk of this is that people don't know what they need, but I would love to get from your perspective, what are the hardest parts about this, or maybe just some of the objections to overcome? What do people think they need or think they don't need, or what do they think they already know? Just give us some insight into that.
Yeah. But I think there's, from our, day-to-day world is, we were born in the last decade as a, cloud native digital first solution. So one of the things, even before we get into, hey, what's under the hood, is just, who is Playvox? So, we have an opportunity to share that really, I think, powerful story, and that being able to have the unfair advantage of starting with a clean sheet of paper and being able to bring forward a very modern, scalable architecture that allows you to take advantage of your complete technology stack. And so as we're having these, discovery questions with a customer, It's very much about, hey, today I'm using Zendesk, or I'm using this CCAS solution, and I have Bamboo HR, and there's just we're pretty complex, and right now I think we just focus on getting agents in the seats, and that's our main concern. The place where we like to educate and really show that there's a lot of value is being that aggregator that allows you to get the data and the tickets and everything out of a Zendesk, and allows you to bring these voice conversations. It allows you to be able to do all of this in a single journey, and from a supervisory perspective, see where each of your agents are and where they're spending their time during the day, and completely enhancing that agent experience. Because at the end of the day, that's one thing that our founder, really created when he put Playvox front and center is, how can I enhance the agent experience? How can I make it better? And so when you put these tools, we all know the most, outside of any of the software you might purchase, the agents and your people sitting in those seats are an extent, not only the most expensive resource, but the most value driven resource. And so a lot of what we will talk about in this, in working with customers, is, what does the agent experience look like? How are they looking at their schedule? How do they feel about improving in their day-to-day work? And how are you measuring that? And how are you making the statistical data available? And then how does it roll up into your company goals like CSAT, Net Promoter Scores, et cetera?
Do you find that when you're asking some of those questions, do you find that they have answers right away, or is there a lot of, yeah, I don't know, we're not really doing that, to where you just kind of call it out?
It's almost 100% is I don't know, because everybody gets really comfortable in the way that they do things, and so they kind of get themselves into this rhythm. And so when you start to ask these discover, because as we talked about earlier, we're not policemen or lawyers, and kind of
Mm-hmm.
we this is what we do every day. So these are things that we need to think about. And so as we're asking these questions, which are really the benefit of having many of these conversations throughout the week, just with working with customers to improve the customer experience. From a prospect perspective, that's not what they do, and so they really want to look at us as that trusted advisor, kind of get to know what other people are doing in the industry. And that's one thing that we do like to share, is not only to make it these discovery questions, but why the questions. It's because they end up translating into return on investment and value for the customer.
Good points.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to get to a recent detailed example, but maybe before we do that, let's say in the market there's Playvox and there's competitor A and competitor B. How do you feel that, or what do you feel that some of the biggest strengths or the best fits are for Playvox, right? Where do you win? Where do you want partners to be thinking about? Is it a customer size? Is it a vertical? Is it a need? Is it a, whatever? I'll kind of leave that up to you to paint the picture.
Yeah. So when we look at, and this is really what excited me about coming to work here at Playbox, is, as we were just kind of moving through this period of COVID, and it moved, when you look at kind of, everybody used to work in a centralized place. People came into the call center. Now they're all working from home. And even in today's world, it's hybrid. And it really started to emphasize the need for better tools, when you can't just simply look out over the floor and see who's in their seat and who's doing what. And so my time as far as coming to Playbox, I think the exciting part of that, and where I feel like we have a decided advantage over competitor A or competitor B, is, one, you have to start with as I mentioned earlier, we were born in the last decade. And when we use terms like, cloud native, digital first, cloud native, important. We never had a legacy solution. We never stood up hardware anywhere. It's been cloud native from the get-go. But digital first. Now we always, we see voice as still king and the primary channel in most contact centers today. But digital first, there's, competitor A and competitor B typically are challenged with that because a lot of our main competitors were born in the 90s, and getting things up to speed in terms of omni-channel and being able to really see what that full journey looks like in terms of real-time data, and also being what I call AI by design. So we were, as the solution was built, AI was definitely, a technology. Microservices in terms of architecturally, the platform was all, a tool that was in our toolbox. So it allows us to be extremely API friendly. So, hey, do you have this API? Yes, we can connect it. Much different than the old kind of CTI middleware games of having to have really complicated integration work. So you see that. How is that reflected? We typically have a much less pro services cost because we're leveraging just open APIs. And like I said, just that ability I come back to is, we had the unfair advantage of just starting with a clean sheet of paper with this, leveraging these types of tools. The other thing that we put a high importance on, as I mentioned, people might say, well, who is Playvox? It also means we got to shine on every single opportunity. So our customer success team is just white glove treatment. We assign a customer success manager to every single deployment, and it shows in the underlying architecture, how it was built, ease of use, modular, but that translates into our time to value. We had a 1,000+ seat contact center or workforce management solution that we signed in the month of October, and they were, presenting at one of our, sales kickoff type forums in January, already talking about the noted improvements they were seeing and how the executives were rallying around, which just translates into unmatched time to value. Signed the deal in October, 1,000+ agents talking about the results in January. Some of our competitors wouldn't even have a project manager assigned by that time.
I love it. I love it.
And that's unfortunately the truth, but it's the truth we like.
Yeah.
So
No, look, it comes back to you. You gotta just do some of the basics really good. And oh yeah, you have a cool technology. Oh, great. Yeah, like we talked about this earlier. You gotta if you get the basics right, the rest is easy.
yeah. And we're also excited as we've grown over the last couple of years. I mean, the relationship that I might add is, we put a high premium on aligning with those that really know this business very well. And this relationship with Telarus, it is extremely meaningful for us in that you mentioned J Lo, Mike Belargin, yourself. I mean, Samantha, there's so many good people that really understand the contact center space. So for us to be able to forge a relationship of, yeah, we're performing out in the market, we're signing great customers, but this was also a very strategic pillar, is align yourself with the right partners. And we feel really strong about our relationship with Telarus.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. All right, example time. So, walk us through a deal that you got brought into, and it's okay if it's, hey, this deal looked absolutely nothing like it was when somebody brought it to us, or we found it and our product fit exactly perfect, or I'm just kind of curious, because what we see a lot in this part of the podcast is the deals don't always end like they start. And so I would love for you to walk us through, did you have one that ended like it started or looked nothing like when it got done? And really, what were you told the problem was? What kind of solution did you put in place? And, what did it solve? How was it different after?
Yeah. So I think, one that would come to mind, and this is an online pharmacy type solution. And it was initially raised to us as an opportunity where they have an existing CCaaS solution in place. And as we know, a lot of the CCaaS providers have moved in and say, we also do WFM. However, as a move from spreadsheets into this first time WFM that was being provided by their CCaaS provider, it was a bit, they were finding a bit cumbersome, and B, that in some ways it wasn't even matching up or, providing, and it could be degree of comfort with their spreadsheets because they used them for a long time, but it was falling short. And so as far as an opportunity that was coming to us, it was uncovered and just said, hey, I don't, from a partner perspective, said, I don't know a lot about the dynamics of this, but what I do know is they're not satisfied with this current solution, and I'd love to help them out. And the partner knew absolutely nothing about Playvox. They said, been hearing a lot of good stuff about you guys. And so the approach that we took is, one, why don't we collectively just get on a call with your customer? Let's see what we can find out. And so we did the discovery call, and interestingly enough is that they did not have a savvy team of workforce management folks. So as we asked, more about the deeper dive questions, they were, they were very pleased. They were like, yeah, this seems like now we understand why we're not kind of able to do what we thought we were going to be able to do. And so I think, we proved to be a very strategic advisor during the sales process, but we also opened up and said, we've talked a lot about scheduling. What do you do from just the everyday agent experience? Do you monitor 25% of your calls, once a month, or what's the approach there? And the initial feedback on that was, well, that's another group, but I also know they're not real pleased with how things are going. It's very manual, and we have a hard time kind of tracking or making things come full circle. And so they introduced us to across the aisle, and we set up a separate conversation to talk through the quality management components. Meanwhile, as that first discovery call ended, we did a one-off with the partner himself and just said, hey, what'd you think of the discovery? We ended up doing a one-to-one demo with him, so he knew what we were going to be taking his customer through next. He said, this is great. And he goes, I've dealt with a lot of solutions in the marketplace. Glad I was introduced to you guys. And he said, I'll sit in on the demo, but you guys have got this. I'll just kind of sit more in the back and learn, just like my customer will go through the journey I'm going to go through in their shoes. And so ultimately, we ended up selling a full workforce engagement management solution to what started as just simply, I need a tool that's easier to use and can help me manage my workforce a little bit better. And, through the process, it was, pretty sizable opportunity. What, might have looked like it was, I think for just under 300 agents, I think the deal that we ended up doing with them was, just under $200,000.
Woo, nice. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Love a story that ends with that number. Good one.
Yeah. And a multi-year deal to boot.
Yeah. No. And it's likely not going to shrink either. That's the beauty about these things.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think you brought this home in the beginning, but maybe just let's put a bow in this. I'm about, all right, partners understand it. They've listened to this point. What do you want to tell a partner that's listening? Maybe they're not comfortable. Maybe they were like this last partner where they go, I don't know a lot about this. Maybe I know a little bit about contact center, but what do you tell them? What are the questions that you give them? Maybe let's put a bow on that.
Yeah, that's a great question, Josh. And I'm a firm believer in when I'm speaking with partners and just keep it simple, is that I recognize because I've worked with partners for many, many years, and I know that if you're going to try to understand security solutions, UCaaS solutions, CCaaS solutions, bots, there's a ton of technology out there. And at the end of the day, the thing that I like to share with workforce management and why it's a value add component, and it doesn't require, we don't need to have you be an expert, but just by asking a couple of simple questions. But before even getting to the question itself, I like to always say, if you're presenting and you're working on an opportunity as a UCaaS solution, for instance, I always have always referenced this even back to previous companies. Do you want to get $1 out of the sale, or do you want to get $4? Because if you're selling a pretty large CCaaS solution, there's a contact center somewhere in there. Now, they might call it a help desk. They could call it a support desk. They could call it inside sales. But there's a contact center, and within that contact center, is a very meaningful part of the business. It's about customer retention. It's about customer satisfaction. There's all sorts of metrics that just show the health of the company. And those contact center folks will have a loud voice as to who gets selected. And if you found the contact center and you start to go through that piece, now you've just collected dollars 2 and 3. And you can also say, hey, we've talked a lot about the contact center, your routing, what kind of, are you using digital channels, voice? What's your reporting look like? How many sites do you have? Do you use BPOs? And now let me ask one more question. How do you schedule? How do you keep the agents in the right place at the right time? And by asking that single question, you've just added another $1 or 2 into that $4 equation. But so I encourage, from a partner perspective, it's just, you could really just ask a couple of questions, because we're all surrounded by experts, that if my main goal is to walk, because this is where I see the fear factor, is I've sold a lot of UCaaS, so I'm comfortable with that. I'm just saying from a partner. So maybe just say, do you have a contact center? You have another group of folks? What does that look like? And if they say, yeah, most of the UCaaS decision makers will say, separate group, but I'd love to introduce you to Amy. Mm-hmm. And then you bring in J-Lo or whomever, and you start to have a little bit more discussion there. And as you're having that discussion, what about the agents and how do you schedule those? And so I always like to say, in the partner community, leverage the village. You got a lot of resources, you always do. We will plug in and put whatever shirt on that we need to wear to support every partner in any transaction, including the discovery, the demo, soup to nuts, as they say. But it's just really about keeping it simple. I wouldn't go into all the dynamics and the technical pieces of the solution. I always tell the partners, you got a lot on your plate. Just a couple of questions on that line will get us in the door, and then let's go win some business.
Good. Great stuff. All right, final thoughts here. As Chuck looks into his crystal ball and says, I'm looking out the next 1 to 2 years, do we just double down on everything that you just mentioned? Do you want the partners to pay attention for anything that you see in the market changing, customer needs, tech stack? Take this anywhere you want it. In Chuck's opinion, what do you think?
Well, there's so many things that, and I know you said I couldn't go for 3.5 hours, so I'm just going to give you the 3.5 minute version. But there's a couple of things, Josh, that I think are important. Is one, today in this kind of short-term window that we talk about in the next couple of years, is that there's a strong desire from customers to do more with a single vendor. And so as you're out speaking and you have the ability to be able to have a wider portfolio, so rather than just go with a single standalone solution, offer somebody that full suite, you have that much more that you get to sell that customer over a period of time. I do see that there's also plenty of runway of people moving from, believe it or not, legacy solutions to cloud. We just saw an announcement the other day about the condition of Avaya, and Avaya has a ton of legacy on-premise solutions. Mm-hmm. And so you don't want to overlook and just kind of jump ahead to all the really cool technology that I'll try to summarize in 60 seconds. But I think there's customers' demand of wanting to do more with a full suite. I think there's the general migration of spreadsheets or legacy equipment into the cloud. And then also we'll see more and more, AI advancements coming into everybody's product. We'll see that from auto scorecarding to just, being able to, schedule people into learning sessions, performance metrics that are going to be driven. AI and machine learning is going to, be a key component. But there's just so much business that I see in the next 24 months, if not greater, that sure, there's going to be some really kind of what I always say RCT, another acronym, really cool technology. But in the meantime, the technology that's here and now, there's just such a high volume and energy enthusiasm on it. I think it represents pretty exciting times for all of us.
Good stuff. Okay, you're right. We could go on and talk forever about AI, and it'll be all robots next time we get on and talk. Maybe I'm not even real right now. Maybe I'm here from Lenza. Who knows? Good stuff, man. Chuck, appreciate you coming on and doing this with me, man. We covered some great stuff.
All right. Well, thanks, Josh. It was truly my pleasure. I appreciate the time, spend some time with you, and look forward to celebrating a lot of success this year.
Okay, everybody, that wraps us up. I'm your host, Josh Lopresto, SVP of Sales Engineering, Chuck Krogman, SVP of Global Sales at Playvox. Until next time, Next Level Biz Tech.
Next Level Biz Tech has been a production of Talaris Studio 19. Please visit Talaris.com for more information.